Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi ta'ala wa barakatuh. Well, today we are going to to end the passive lesson with the last part, which is transforming passive sentence and a question to active. So it's the opposite. So most of the time you deal with most of the time you deal with sentences, of course, from active to passive. So this time but sometimes you can be asked to transform sentences from the passive to active or question, of course, it depends. So we are going to use the the other way around, of course, the opposite. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi ta'ala wa barakatuh. Well, today we are going to deal with the last part of the passive lesson, which is how to transform sentences or question, of course, from passive to active. So it's the opposite. If you remember last time, we talked about this plan here. So we said this is the active, and if you want to transform it into the passive, you use this one. So it's the opposite now. So you've got your passive sentence or question, of course, and then you are going to put it into the active, of course. So the agent becomes the subject becomes the object, and then your verb here, passive verb, will be turned into an active verb, of course, on the rest of the sentence here. Let's see our first example here. So corruption is practiced everywhere by people. Corruption is practiced everywhere by people, of course. Now, my agent here becomes the subject. Okay, this is one. Two, to make things easy for you, so you start with the agent. So you bring it here, subject. Two, the subject of the passive, so returns to its ordinary place, which is here as an object. See, and then the rest of the sentence if you got a longer sentence. Now, concerning my verb here, so in which tense is this verb here? We don't have a time marker here, whether it's yesterday or every day or last week or last month. No. So it's the auxiliary here. See, the auxiliary. It can help you. It can help you determine the tense of your verb here. So what is the tense here? So it is practice. So it is the simple present passive. So I'm going to put my verb in the simple present here. So since the subject is a plural, then I'm going to say people practice corruption everywhere. And this is your active sentence here. My second example, bribery will be eradicated, and you don't have an agent here. So whenever, if you don't have an agent, you have to provide one, of course, in your exam, in your test, or in your book. If you don't have an agent, so you have to provide one, you find one. Of course, it should be related, of course, thematically to your sentence here. It should be related to the sentence you are talking about. For instance, here, we are talking about bribery. So, your agent here, for instance, the government, the authorities, any agent, so it becomes the subject here. Your bribery here, which is the subject of the passive, becomes the object. See? And then here concerning the verb, so you should know what is the tense of the verb here, which is will be eradicated. That means it is the future simple passive. Then you should know how to form the active, of course. Then we say the government or they will eradicate bribery. Now, how about question now? We've got a question, of course. Now we we have one example here. So, was the man killed by Tom? Was the man killed by Tom? This is a passive question, of course. Now, if I want to turn it into the active, so Tom here becomes the subject. See? The man here, which is the subject of the becomes the object of the active. So here I am asking a question, then number two, I should ask a question too. But you've got a problem here. I cannot use this auxiliary here. No. Why? Because here it is the passive. That's why I used was. In here it is the active. So which tense is used here in the passive? Was and killed. So you should know this, of course. It is the simple past passive. Then what do we use? What do we use when we ask a question, a yes or no question, in the simple past when we have a verb? So we don't use the auxiliary. We use to do in the simple past. Then I say, did Tom kill the man? See, should be very careful. Now, how about having a WH question, of course, like this one here. When is the car washed by your father? So how are you going to, to transform it into the active? Number one, you are going to repeat the question word here, which is the WH question, of course, an interrogative pronoun. This is one. Two, you are going to bring your object here to its place, subject, of course. Now, what do we need here between the question word and the subject? We need an auxiliary because we are asking a WH question, of course. And we cannot use is here. Why? Because it is the simple present, is washed. And then what do we use when we ask a WH question in a simple present when we have a verb? Then we use the auxiliary to do. And you got your father here, since this is third person singular, so we say does. So we don't say is. So we can't say that. So we say, when does your father, and you've got the infinitive, of course, here, washed, past participle, of course, then it becomes